So Pamela, I have to go against your will. They want us to use the mic so we can pick you up on camera so that people can hear you a little better.
I can always follow you around.
My name is Pamela Harris. I'm owner of Coconino Appraisal Service. I'm a certified appraiser specializing in Flagstaff. I am VA and FHA approved. Just tell you a little bit about myself. I started out working with my mom, Kathy Oakley, with Oakley Appraisal Service in late 2001. I was licensed in 04, certified in 2006, and I opened Coconino Appraisal Service in 2007. I just wanted to give you a quick once-over. I'll start with FHA. I get a lot of FHA questions regarding property requirements, and I see a lot of roadblocks that delay the closing process, so I thought I'd start here with FHA Mortgages on the Rise. There is a new 4000.1 handbook that was effective 2015. Some of the mainstays carry through, but there are some significant changes as well. Common repair items that we see for appraising are inoperable appliances. Yes, appraisers are now required to check appliances for FHA. If you've got that faulty burner on your stove, that's going to require a repair item. Other things that we see, loose or dangling wires in the attic or crawl space, inoperable outlets or plumbing fixtures, non-permitted additions, and peeling paint. Peeling paint is a big one for FHA. Most in the industry are familiar with the pre-78 guidelines for lead-based paint. Anything pre-78 has to be repaired if it's peeling. Fewer are familiar with the post-78 guideline that says any home built after 78 also has to have its peeling paint repaired. So the appraiser has to report that deficiency and require repair. So when you're looking at a home, get that 78 year out of your head. It's any peeling paint for FHA. Why appraisers call... Oh,
Sorry. So when you're saying peeling paint, is it on the home only, or if you have a deck that has peeling paint, will that be approved?
so I'll grab this one, but then we'll just hold any other questions to the end. It's the house and related improvements. Everything. Shed, deck, eaves, everything about the house. And pre-78, it's interior paint as well. Post-78 is not. So why appraisers call for inspections? It's because FHA makes us. That's the long and the short of it right there. So common inspection items that we see are standing water against the foundation. That's a big one this time of year. So think of that pooling water that's around the foundation at your listing appointment. That calls for an automatic foundation inspection. It's going to be costly, and it's going to delay the process if you're not familiar with that up front. Other things we see, faulty or defective mechanical systems, so HVAC, plumbing, that type of deal has to be in working order. And then leaky and worn out roofs, that's another big one that we see with inclement weather and Flagstaff. FHA has a guideline, I think it's 5 years remaining on the roof, which it's a 30-year mortgage, so that doesn't really add up, but that's what their requirements are, so you want to make sure for that. Zoning, this is a big one for FHA that most are unaware of. Illegal property uses are not acceptable for FHA. So when you go to your listing appointment and you see that garage that's been converted into a guest house, and the owner's finished it, heated it, there's a kitchenette and a bathroom, and you've marked that box for FHA financing, you need to let that owner know that they would either have to convert that back to a garage, which is what it's approved for, or they would have to obtain the permits and everything for that. So bear that in mind. Same goes for bedroom additions, converted patios into living area. All those things are going to render it unacceptable. This is a big one, manufactured housing. It's a new guideline. Vinyl skirting is no longer acceptable for FHA alone. So let me be clear, vinyl skirting alone is not acceptable. FHA says that if the perimeter enclosure is non-load bearing, lightweight material like vinyl, that has to be backed with some sort of durable concrete, masonry, something like that. So this property here would only be acceptable if on the underside of that vinyl is some perimeter enclosure to that. And I had a deal not too long ago where this came up, and every party in the transaction was pretty PO'd, and devastated, quite frankly, when the appraisal came back saying, hey, you've got to back up your entire perimeter foundation. It was costly, it delayed things, and worst of all, everybody was taken off guard. The buyer, the seller, the realtor, the lender, everybody said, no, you're wrong, appraiser, you know? So this is a really important thing to think about. Also, an unenclosed crawl space isn't going to be acceptable either. So those are two big things that are happening locally in Flagstaff. I'm going to wrap up on FHA here, but they've got a great resource center. If you have questions, you can reach out to 1-800-CALL-FHA or email them at answers@hud.gov. You can actually speak with an FHA appraiser in the Santa Ana office, give them your scenario, and they can give you guidance. So that's really helpful there. I'm going to move on, potentially. There we go. I'm going to jump around just a little bit to a few odds and ends and some common issues that we see, so bear with me. Let's start with cost per square foot. So cost per square foot is a real familiar method that we're aware of in this industry, and it's a question I get all the time. What's the cost per square foot in my area? The problem is that cost per square foot is everything summed up. It's appeal, quality, condition, features, amenities, all rolled into one misleading number. So while cost per square foot can give you an average or a median, and it can help you show trend in the market, it can't compute value. So don't be this guy. Instead, search for comps like an appraiser. Try searching MLS for properties with similar amenities and basing your analysis off the actual sale price, not the cost per square foot. Got a little example here. Let's say your subject is 2,000 square foot, single family in P Trails, 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath, the usual suspects. We would start researching for comps within the last 6 months, all of P Trails, and we would expand as necessary. And then from there, maybe sales that range a couple hundred square foot either direction, 1,700 to 2,300 square foot, and maybe a few years either direction, expanding as necessary. And then from there, it's really process of elimination. We look at our pool of sales, and we go through each one to determine which shares the most similarities with the subjects. And so let's play some easy numbers here. If the highest sale matching your criteria is 400, and you're going to list your subject for 450, you need to ask why. What justification do you have? Because the appraiser will ask that very same question. And if you're using the cost per square foot method, you're not going to run into this. You won't have the opportunity to provide this in-depth analysis. So that's something you really want to stay away from. A few more things to consider here. Multiple offers. If you get multiple offers, email them to the appraiser, even if they're not in backup position. It helps us to demonstrate the desirability of your property to the bank. We can say, see bank, not just one person wants to buy this home, but 4 people do. And that really helps with high-end or properties that are selling at a premium, properties selling above listing price. It just helps us to provide all that ammunition up front, and it helps to provide a more solid appraisal. Market condition adjustments, time adjustments for increasing values aren't usually applied until the comp is 4 to 6 months old. So when you're looking for those sales to list your property, and you say, this is a great comp, but it sold 2 months ago, I'm going to inflate that. An appraiser is going to wait for that to be seasoned. And that's partially market norm and also guidance given to us by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They want to see that property is seasoned before we apply those adjustments. Increasing property values have been noted in many areas of Flagstaff. Adjustments tend to range between 0.5% and 1% a month when they're applied, but it's so neighborhood specific. Cheshire, Coconino Estates, and NoHo can all have different appreciation rates.
Attending. I'm going to have to take a moment here and disconnect Mr. Live here. Okay, so I'm Patrick Abel, owner and operator of Snapshot Home Inspections. am a member of INTERNACHI, stands for International Association of Certified Home Inspectors. So why is that important? Well, they've got 22,000 members and they offer a lot of, let's say, 750 hours of continued training and education. So I've got a lot of resources at my fingertips in the event that I run into something that I may have questions with. So, pretty easy to navigate all of the training options, and I can do quick searches, and they've got forums, and you can get, I can get all the answers that I may need. So, regarding myself and where I work and when I work, I belong to 3 Association of Realtors: Flagstaff, Sedona, and Phoenix. I will travel just about anywhere as long as I can get in the home. So if someone's willing to let me in, or if the homeowner's home, or there, they can let me in, I can accommodate that as well. When will I work? Obviously, whenever my schedule dictates or allows, but I will also accommodate weekends. If you're having a hard time finding an inspector, perhaps, give me a jingle, maybe I can accommodate you on a Saturday or Sunday as well. So I think one of the more common questions I get is, how much do you charge for a home inspection? Well, like probably the rest of you, you guys like transparency when it comes to cost. So I have my pricing available right on my website. So my website is snapshotinspections.com. It's on my business card, which is on your table there. My website is supported by HomeGauge, and that's kind of handy because they also accommodate my software that I use for my inspections. So it makes it very seamless when we request an inspection, book an inspection, everything can be handled very seamlessly through the website, as well as my software gets uploaded, and then it makes it very easy for you guys to retrieve the reports, or your clients can retrieve the agreement that they need to sign prior to the inspection. So regarding pricing, just click the tab there, for pricing, and it's based on my pricing is based on square footage. There's an up fee for the age of the home, and maybe an up fee for if there's a under-floor crawl space. Or if there's a detached building, then I charge a little bit extra per square foot for that. Or it's kind of a la carte. So if you have a swimming pool or something else that you need inspected, the price is set accordingly. So you can just scroll down, your typical scroll there, and scroll down to find what you need. Once you understand the pricing and you like an inspection, obviously you can just give me a call, phone number, or email, or I also have a request inspection tab here, and you can request an inspection right through my website. Just click the request an inspection, and you will become, presented with the HomeGauge seamless part of my software. So if some of you may have already used HomeGauge, and if you have, then you would already have a login and an account, and so you could just go here and log in. Or if not, and you're new to it, then you would just select here and schedule your appointment. Pretty self-explanatory. As a realtor, you would click this, or if you have your client request an inspection, then they could, click that and move on to the next page. They would enter all of their pertinent information. For today's example, I requested an inspection as a home buyer. So obviously, when I put in my pertinent information, I put in my name, address, phone number, any other pertinent information, select the address that I want to have inspected. If as a home buyer, I would put in my realtor's information, or if you guys were requesting the inspection, obviously you would put in your buyer's information. So very, very self-explanatory. Then the property details. So in this case, I got a house from '96. It's 1,800 square feet. You know, the other pertinent information, MLS, number of baths, bedrooms, etc. It's all pretty self-explanatory. From here, it's like, okay, well, what do you want inspected? So you would say, well, I want a complete home inspection. And then there's additional services. This is where you would, add things like a pool inspection or something like that, or maybe a detached building or workshop. And then, of course, cash discounts as well. So select your complete home inspection. In this case, we've got 2,000 square feet. Age of the home is over 20 years. Over here, we're going to put in 600 square feet for a detached building, so you get a little multiplier with that. And then customer wants to pay cash, so everything gets tallied up, and then there's your total. Very easy. Sorry?
It's hard to read, the
Oh,
discounts.
so yes, cash discounts or repeat customer discount. Maybe the transaction fell through for one reason or another, and now they need to shop for another home, and then they're going to need another home inspection. So I would certainly offer a discount for that as well. And then of course military discount as well. So if you got a customer with some military background and say not the cash, then you can accommodate that. So it is one discount per inspection per transaction. Not compounded. So then, yeah, you would just advance to the screens and then put in your requested dates. There's a first and second preferred, morning, afternoon. Advance along. Now you can confirm your appointment details, and you just scroll down. Some of the information here. Scroll down to get to the bottom part here, your square footage. Sorry, was there a question? Okay, so then, once you got confirm your details, just request your appointment.
Look at that specific market area and determine it from there. We haven't noted any declining values at this point, although there have been a few areas that have really started to stabilize. I ran across some interesting vacant land data, believe it or not, the other day. So there have been 57 vacant land sales in all of Flag proper. So MLS areas 10 through 40, 57 sales. Half of those sales are in Pine Canyon, which is kind of an astounding number. Obviously, the vast majority of those are to out-of-state and valley buyers, goes without saying. So we can continue or anticipate those continue build up in those luxury areas as other areas get more expensive. But on a broader scale, I think we can also anticipate those out-of-state and valley buyers driving up our high-end but non-luxury market, as we saw during the 02-06 timeframe. So that $500,000 home that's difficult for a Flagstaff local to attain is potentially a bargain for those coming from California. Home values continue to outpace wages locally. No surprise, it's been that way for a long time. But just something to keep an eye out for. Artificial appreciation, speculation. We've seen those buyers coming in saying, I don't care if this house is listed for $20,000 more than the competition. It's $100,000 less than where I'm from. And so you need to make sure you school and educate your buyers that they might wake up tomorrow and the market has fallen. We saw that during the last boom and recession. And so that's just something to watch out for so it won't get us into trouble again. Anyway, that's all the time they gave me today. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take them at this point.
Can we get a copy of this slide?
Sure, I can email it to you and you can distribute it.
Yeah, we'll put it
absolutely.
up on the site.
Sure. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Hi, Pam.
Oh, hi, Colleen.
So say you have a listing.
Yeah.
You have an unpermitted addition.
Yeah.
How does, and I'm kind of new to resale, so how do you go about working with the city? Can you go back to the city and get permit for stuff that was done earlier?
You can, and I want to be careful how I word this because it depends on who you talk to the city, what day it is, and if it's raining or sunny, you know, what answer you're going to get. But in theory, if it's done in a workmanlike manner and it doesn't look like I did it, then it would probably be something. If it's done in a workmanlike manner, it should be able to be permittable. So under those circumstances, the city should not come in and say, we're going to penalize you, rip everything out and start over. They should not. Now, who knows? But what should happen theoretically is they would say, it's done in a workmanlike manner, we're going to start our inspection process from the beginning, even though it's built, and anything we find, you would have to correct at that point in time. So that's kind of, that's in theory how it should go. Yes? Any other questions? Yes?
Does the FHA appraisal still stay with the house for 6 months?
So it's interesting. Everybody has a 3 or 6 month. They have a guideline in their head of how long an appraisal lasts. The appraisal is good the day I'm there. That is when the appraisal is good. Even though that appraisal probably won't be completed until a week after I leave your house, that appraisal, the effective date of the appraisal is the day I walk into your property, and that is the date that it's good. A bank puts in supplemental guidelines that say, for us, this appraisal is good for 3 months, or for us, it's for 6 months. So that would be specific on that lender and the program. There are various FHA programs. Some would require 2 or 3 appraisals. That may only be good for a month or 2. But that wouldn't be on the appraiser's discretion. It would be for the bank. And in an ever-changing market, I should add, it's a good thing that appraisals shouldn't last forever. I can do an appraisal today and come back in a month, and depending on that area, it could be a very significant change. Yes?
If you're trying to appraise a very unique property, one that doesn't have any comps, but you may find something that's further out so would you prefer to find a property further away or a property that's sold longer than 6 months ago? How do you appraise a unique property?
So I would prefer both. When I'm appraising a unique property, it's not uncommon to use a comp for one reason and one reason only. Let's say that property is 2,000 square foot, and I'm going to use a comp that's 800 square foot. Doesn't happen often, but it has happened because this property has the same view influence, or it's Act 89, just like the subject, or something like that. You want to find as many similarities as you can, and then we would adjust for the differences. So Fannie Mae even says you're allowed to go back 12, 24, or longer if you need to, as long as there's justification. Now, if I'm going back 12, 24, or longer because I can't find any sales that hit that sale price, that's not acceptable. But if I'm going back because I can't find any sales that hit these amenities that I need to bracket, then that would be something that we would do. So it's really case specific. There have been scenarios where I'm doing an appraisal in one subdivision and I search the entire Flagstaff city limits for comps. You know, it's that unique. Let's say a straw bale home. I'm going to look all over Flagstaff, probably Boney Park, probably Muncie. I'm going to look everywhere to try to find straw bale homes because the lender says, hey, if you don't have comps that are straw bale, I don't want to touch that property. It's not marketable. Obviously, it's marketable if we see comps. If we don't, then we know that that's an atypical property and then there's concern. So there are certainly times when that would be okay. That 2,000 square foot in Ponderosa Trails would not be one of those scenarios. You know, there's enough data in that area, so it's really case specific.
Other than putting multiple offers and giving you the multiple offers to get an idea about desirability,
Yes.
what else can we do to help you appraise?
The multiple offers is a big one. Other things that you can do is let us know market reaction. You know, if you put that property on and you have 15 showings that first day, I want to know about it. It may not directly lead to a higher property value, but it's going to lead to a more supported appraisal. Other things you want to know, some agents provide a lot of detail, some not so much. It's a personal preference. So if the owner has put in $50,000 the past 12 months, go ahead and email a list of those improvements to your appraiser and let them know. We should pick up on it when we're there, but you know the property more than we do in the hour that we spend at it. So anything that you can give us will help us, and it should be a partnership. Obviously there's a firewall with value and things like that, but you can assist us and vice versa in making the most reasonable and strong appraisal that we can. Yes.
I was told by an appraiser not to do that, to give you any insight about anything, because it's a conflict of interest and they're not supposed to change their thoughts.
So if you're giving me your opinion and you're saying, look at these wood grain laminate countertops, aren't they great? And I think that it should sell for more. That's arbitrary. That doesn't matter. If you're telling me the owner replaced the roof and that roof cost $10,000, that's a fact. And I want to know those facts. So those are things that would be important. If an appraiser, the only a scenario where I could see being uncomfortable is if it were directed in a way that you were pressuring for a higher value. That's what appraisers have been trained to kind of, look for and back off on, because we're supposed to be impartial and independent. So if I were to have that feeling, I would maybe say, hey, these aren't facts, this is arbitrary, I'm going to say independent. But a new roof that costs $10,000 is a new roof that costs $10,000, no matter who the appraiser is. So that would be a valid perspective. Yes.
Do you see a big difference between houses that have like renewable energy and stuff you sell on them?
I wanted to touch on that, and my presentation was initially like 22 minutes, and I had to keep picking things out, and that was one of them. I'm glad you brought that up. Right now, there are few appraisers in Northern Arizona who will adjust for solar amenities. The vast majority will not. Mark can maybe touch on that. And the reason is we can't prove it. I can't find a house that sold, I can't find multiple homes throughout the years that have.
So now I've gone up and I've done the inspection. When I requested, I can back up a little bit here. Once you confirm and hit submit, emails will be sent out immediately to the realtor, to the home buyer, and then to myself. And then I also have it automatically send me a text. So I'm going to get a message immediately that someone just requested a home inspection. And then I can respond, as soon as possible. So as soon as I get out of the attic, someone else's place. I'll call you right back, and then we can, talk about the dates and see, what works best. So let's. Now that I've gone up and done the inspection, and when I'm finished, I will upload it, and then the realtor and the buyer will also receive an email at that time saying that their report has been uploaded. So then they can log into their homepage site again, and from there, they will have access to the report. Once you log in, you'll have your reports here, and so if you use HomeGauge or you use me more than once or another inspector who uses HomeGauge, all of your reports will be listed here, so you'll have all of your archives right here in one place. In this case, in my example, I just have one report. So I would just go ahead and select a few details. So once I get to this page, I have some options. From here, I can, most likely the first thing you're going to want to do is look at the report. So you would just launch the report. As Melinda has mentioned, once you look at the report, you can also create a request list right from the report automatically. And I'll walk us through that here in a second. So for now, we'll just take a look at the report. Okay, I'll make this quick. So you go through your report, you've looked at the report, and now you want to create a request list. So you would just click this here for request list. And at this point, you can say, hey, I want to look at just the summary items for my request list, or I want to look at the entire report. In this case, we're just going to look at the summary. And from here, it's just going to go down through all of the summary items one by one. And you can, at this point, decide whether you want to accept this particular situation as is or add it to the list. I'm not concerned about the tree, so let's just say I accept this one as is. I go to the next item, but I am concerned about the water heater vent. It's missing some screws, so I'm going to add that to my list. and I go through, okay, once I hit that, you hit add to the list, and you can say, oh, repair or replace or monetary value or comments, and start to create your list right here from the report. When you're all done doing and going through your summary, at this point you can view your request list that you just created. And now here you have your entire list. At this point you can send it or save it. And I was going to launch right to the list completely, but I was going to hyperlink there, but we're running a long time. So, no, I'm sorry. Just go as a recap. Patrick Cable with Snapshot Home Inspections. I aim for service. I'm in this industry because I had a bad experience on a home inspection on a home that I sold. So it's like, well, I'm going to go and try and deliver a better product. So that's why I'm here. I cover a lot of territory. I can do weekends. Transparent pricing. So any questions, just with my pricing. We can do verbal or online inspection requests. Seamless scheduling. So through this HomeGig software, your scheduling, your agreements, your reports, request lists, forwarding, saving. It's green, it's electronic, no paper. If you want a paper report, I can certainly print one and put it in a binder, no problem. And seamless request lists. Saves time when your bins are. And some of you that have used me can vouch for that. Any questions? All right. Thank you.
So yeah, absolutely. So that repair list that he showed, that was what I was referring to. You can just say, refer that to as an attachment, put that in the bins or refer to attachment. So it's made my life very easy. But we have great inspectors in town as well, so we were only able to get 2, and we are kind of trying to keep time close. But we have Gary Howell, which I know a lot of you use as well, Bartlett Appraiser here in Flagstaff. He's going to come up and finish up the inspections. And then, did Bill ever show up from Company Neocast? Well, that'll save us some time. All right, if you have questions, call Bill.
Thank you, Melinda. Thank you to the Board of Realtors, my fellow associates, and folks that I work with within my community. My name is Gary Howell. I have Howell Home Inspections. I have over 12 years experience in the home inspection industry here in Flagstaff, Arizona. Prior to that, I had 25 years in the construction industry. I decided I'm tired of employees and quote-unquote subs, so I decided to work for myself. I'm enjoying this type of work. I want to give a personal thanks first and foremost that as I see many old and new faces and new members, I had a tough last year. My wife passed away 10 months ago. But I'm here to tell you, and that's part of the reason I wanted to come and personally speak, I am here to let you know I'm back in the game. I don't do more than 1 inspection a day. That's just because I'm going to learn to enjoy life. You need to learn the hard way sometimes. But with that change, I would like to also present some topics to you and introduce with you to help me do a better inspection for you based upon a lot of folks feel it's a bump in the road. But in today's world, I passed out some flyers out there that I do send to every customer via email, and it's titled, "In today's busy and challenging housing market, the house needs to be ready for a home inspection." If by chance you don't have one on your table, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll send it to you, but I send it to each and every customer. I'm contemplating whether or not to send it to each and every listing agent. You may ask why. Well, this summer alone, I've had 22 houses without utilities on. In one way or another. That's like trying to test drive a car without fuel or tires. So it's been terrible. One customer came in from New York, from California, drove in with their son, the wife, spent the night, went to the inspection, no gas is on, and they drove 14 hours to get here. I do charge $75 an hour door to door to re-inspect. So obviously I can't do the house. And I'm just asking for help, and please, if you do get a chance to read this, it's just something meant to help. But also to discuss, have things where I can access it. Quote unquote, the sub panels behind that painting, it'd be great knowledge to know that, and or quote unquote it's removed. So I'm pretty much a humanistic inspection. With that, I want to share with you In my reports, I send photographs. I now am one of these home inspectors. Now that I'm slowing down in life, I enjoy my job. I want to be more of a personal person. I want to reach your client. I invite clients to attend my inspections. I prefer they would come in the last half hour. In fact, I even offer a $25 cash discount if they will come. I feel that will help. I'm kind of giving them a little bonus for coming. But I can look them in the eye and say, Melinda, that is a GFI that needs to be fixed. Yes, that is fire, health, safety, or structural, which are major topics.
Don't get me wrong, you and I know the typical buyer walks up to that property and they see the solar panels that are paid for. That's going to be desirable and they may want to pay more for that. How much? I don't know. We can't prove it yet. And if we can't prove an amenity, then we can't adjust for it.
Well, you can prove how much it produces per month, and then base how much you
But
made on it.
That
That's
doesn't-
different than
yeah.
market value.
That's
value and
costed,
use.
yeah, that's completely, true, and that's why that buyer who comes in would maybe be more receptive to that home. But we can't prove that that cost difference makes that buyer pay more. So until we can start seeing that, same goes for roster block, ICF, straw bale. Those are all things that are very energy efficient and are desirable in that regard. But they're also there hasn't been enough sampling through the years to show and to prove that there's a market to pay more for that. So I anticipate at some point there will be. But just recently, solar has been becoming more and more popular. So that's something that we need to happen. We need more and more resales to prove that. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. That's all the information. This is the slide presentation all over, so that you guys are having those facts to talk about, review, run listing appointments, discuss these things with your clients. Like, are you going to check that box on your listing profile that's going to allow you to maybe sell it at FHA? So a lot of great information. Thank you, Caroline. And another wonderful, excellent appraiser right here. Both of you are fantastic. Thank you so much for coming. Mark Gard, he's going to come up here and talk about some of the industry insights that he sees and take some questions as well. So.
You really have to use that thing.
I had to.
All right. I hate these things. And I've got a loud voice and it usually carries throughout a room. But anyways, I'm Mark Gard. I own Guardian Appraisal Service. I started appraising in 1993, and Guardian Appraisal started the year after, 1994. So I've only, in spite of myself, I've almost made it 25 years. So seen a lot of changes. I've seen a lot of changes over the years. And one of the most dramatic changes to appraisals happened 2005, am I remembering right, when the UAD came in? 2005. It's called the UAD form. It's still the standard, they call it the 1004, the URAR, the legal length appraisal that you see. Usually, if it's just the appraisal, it's, I think, 8 pages. And what's unique about the UAD is that Fannie Mae, and FHA is also doing this, Freddie Mac, they want to, I'm not sure if this is quite the correct term, electronicize the appraisal process, or at least the appraisal review process. So when we finish an appraisal and we upload it to their system, and lenders have their own appraisal department, or they might be using an AMC. So as soon as we upload it to their website, it gets kicked up to Fannie Mae, and it runs through a review program that then kicks it back out and gives it a risk score. And it's from 1 to 5. And then it is given to the underwriter at the lender. And so if you get a 1, woo, easy money. Now, why do we get this risk score? What does that have to do with anything? Well, as many of you may know, lenders such as Prime Lending, they have like a credit card. And they use that credit card to lend money to people. To pay off that credit card, they sell those loans to Fannie Mae or to some other secondary market, typically Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The secondary market does not want to take on risky loans. So they want to make sure that they are conforming, that if they do go upside down, they're going to get their money back. So what happens if an underwriter, for lack of a better term, slips up and lets a 5 go through without additional supporting data as to why the appraiser thinks it's worth that? Well, when they go to sell it on the secondary market, that buyer will look at it and go, this is a risk score of 5. I don't want this thing. And so that $300,000 loan, or whatever it is, goes back to prime lending, and that's $300,000 less that they can lend to a new person. So that's what happens. So the comparisons also that are electronically made aren't just to market data, it's to other appraisers in the area. So they can see what somebody else rated this property a year ago maybe, or rated one of your comparable sales. And so if you have looked at the appraisal grid, you'll see under quality there's anywhere from a Q1 to a Q5. There's only a few Q1s in Flagstaff. That is like the highest level of customization that you can get. Condition, you'll see a C1 through a C6, I think, and a C6 is basically a teardown. C1 is a new house. And so they may come back to us after it's been electronically reviewed and say, oh, you called this comparable number 1 a C2 last time, and now you're calling it a C3. Why is that? Sometimes we may rate it incorrectly when we first did it. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes the difference between a C3 and a C4 is nominal, but that's what happens. So that's what we have to deal with. So that's why we ask you to give us as much data as possible in your listings. So, and Pamela did a great job, and she actually touched on a few things that I had prepared or thought about. But you were asking, what can you do? So if you have an appraisal that doesn't come in at the contract price, and you feel that it should have, you need to have data to support that. But you can't call the appraiser up and just go, it's worth it. No, it's worth it. No, it's worth it. What you need to do, because we have a process now. We have the firewall that Pamela mentioned. You need to contact your lender. You need to say, I want a reconsideration of value on 123 Elm. And here are some comparable sales that I think the appraiser should have considered. Now, hopefully they came off of the CMA that you prepared for your listing package for your client. And hopefully the appraiser used some of those same listings, because if sales. If he or she didn't use the same sales you did, the two of you may want to talk after the deal is done. But it is possible that we're not perfect. We do occasionally miss sales. I remember one time years ago, underwriter called me up and said, why didn't you use the house next door? I'm like, what? What do you mean? And it was 50 square feet out of my search range. It was like, duh, yeah, I should have saw that. So that's one of the things that I do is I go to the county parcel viewer. And if you don't know what that is, give me a call. I can give you guidance how to find out how to use it. And you can click on a button, a tool, and it will show you the sales that are nearby. Blue sales are land, yellow, gold, whatever you want to call it. Those are improved sales. And I'll look and see if there is indeed a sale next door to my subject property. Maybe it's a comparable sale, maybe it's not, but it also could be helpful because it might help me extract what a lot value is when I haven't had any lot sales in a particular neighborhood. The other thing on the reconsideration of value is, take a look at the appraisal and see if the person maybe, if there's a discrepancy in the square footage. Did the person miss some features that you, that you feel might have added value? Let them know about that, okay? Other data that you can provide to us is when you do your listing.
Yes, it has a photograph, but it's the cheapest, easiest fix. It's a $15 part. Let's not blow it up when you go meet your agent. You go ahead and start your bids or review requests. Again, on the personal vein, I like to represent that I can look them in the eye and I can tell them. If they're a first-time home buyer, I personally believe they have the right to be there and learn about it. I was 20 years young when I built my first house on Pine Street up by the Elks Lodge. I didn't know a darn thing. I had to learn the hard way on the home inspection and trust the builder. Incidentally, I built a house, or bought a house on Old Walnut Canyon Road from an appraiser who I had trusted, who didn't tell me all the things, like there was gray water lines throughout the property. That's how I got into business, because I, number one, got tired of subs and employees, and it's time to do the job right. And it brings me to the point, I want my clients to go in eyes wide open. I want your clients to go in eyes wide open. Know if this is a big deal, this is a little deal, or if it's a big deal, is it a big enough deal, or can you live with it? Just like this gentleman's photo of the tree on the roof. Of course we write that. Negative grade, we write that. But fire, health, safety, structural are in red text, and I tell them that. And I say, yes, this is a big problem. Blue text is let's upgrade. There's no way we should expect a seller, or if I was a seller selling my 1980s house, I should have to bring it up to today's standard 100%. To me, that's ludicrous. So let's be honest. That's an upgrade, and I use that, and I use it in blue-colored text. So again, trying to be humanistic, we're not going to say to the seller, you need to fix all of this stuff. The seller's going to say, no, it was permitted, it had a certificate of occupancy. I don't need to do that. The house is fine. If you want to upgrade it, great. Or sometimes, let's even use the equation of a water heater. It's 25 years old, past the end of life expectancy. That would be appropriate. You could ask for possibly through your agent as a home buyer, where you would go ahead and say, hey, help me out with this. I'm going to have to buy this. Or they go ahead and get a home warranty. That's up to them. I stay away from that. But I do at least discuss everything. And then black text items, in all honesty, are handyman, regular yard maintenance, little things here and there. I have a great big long list when it comes to having this ready, and I encourage you all, if you can't get one over there, feel free, there's plenty of cards, and some of my rack cards. I'm always available to talk to you. I'm always available to talk to the clients. But more importantly, my job now, as a humanistic man that has made my living here in Flagstaff, Arizona, since 1974, my name is everything. If they have a question, you have a question, you call me, you email me, I am here. No, I no longer work 7 days a week. I lost a wife. I'm going to live with my family. And that's why I thank you for enduring with me. This summer, I went to Mexico, I went to California, I went to Nashville with grandkids and family. So please accept that I'm going to work 3 weeks a month, and I'm going to take a week off, and I'm going to go have fun with my family. I'm open for questions now. Well, good. I'm glad you guys are all smiling. You know I'm a wild and wacky kind of guy, but I'm the most honest guy you'll know. Thank you for your time.
It's very informative. And I apologize. We also have some great valuable information. Krista with Flagstaff Well and Supply. How many people sell quite a bit of properties with wells? Yeah, we're kind of seeing a little bit more of that. People's perception of those have changed as well. So we're going to go ahead and get Drew first to come on up. How many people know radon's an issue? Oh, all the hands go up. So he's going to talk about that.
Hi, I'm Drew Ramsey. I run Architectural Environmental, but we go by AEA for short. We offer architectural design, photovoltaic design and installation, which is solar electric for those who don't know. We've done over 200 systems in northern Arizona. A great example of our work is if you've been to the Grand Canyon Visitor Center, we designed and installed that. So that's a great job that if you're there, check it out. It's awesome, but I might be a little biased. We also do a lot of environmental testing, mold, asbestos, but the one I wanted to talk about today is radon. Radon is an invisible, odorless, tasteless gas that can only be detected with specialized equipment. Radon has been found in every building that I have ever tested in Flagstaff. So we know it's here. What we're concerned with is when that level is found to be above the EPA action level. The EPA action level is 4.0. when you're dealing with picocuries per liter of air. That level is the concern level that has been set by the EPA. So they've done their research and everything, so that's why we adhere to that level. As far as radon, we found that a third of the houses that we had tested in Flagstaff have actually come back above that EPA action level. So it's much more prevalent than most people realize. As far as radon, it's part of the radioactive decay chain. So as uranium decays through different heavy metals / radioactive materials, eventually we get down to radon-222. It's the only gas in the radioactive decay chain, and so that's why it's an issue, because it comes up through cracks, crevices in the floor. What radon gas causes in people is, after you've been exposed for, it can be anywhere from 5 to 75 years, they've found, that it can lead to lung cancer. And so there are documented cases in the city of Flagstaff that have been diagnosed as radon-caused lung cancer. And so it's a health risk that is definitely fixable. It's definitely something that can be tested and known before you make your biggest investment that could be potentially causing harm to your health. And so with us, we use a continuous radon monitor. It's one of the most accurate devices for testing radon. Something I've found and been concerned with lately is a lot more people are offering radon testing. The majority of these people are using cheaper machines that are not accurate and are not certified by the major certification company, NRPP, which is the National Radon Proficiency Program. They aren't certified because they're less accurate than the certified devices. Ours is accurate up to 98.8%, so it's one of the best ways to test for radon. One of the other benefits with a continuous radon monitor is that it's a 48-hour test, and we will get a printout at the end of that 48 hours, so we can get that report to you within a couple hours of picking up that result from the house. So with that, we aren't mailing out to a lab, waiting on that, and making sure we get everything to a potential buyer before the inspection period ends. As far as the radon that's found in Flagstaff, we have found that the west side of Flagstaff is more common for finding high levels of radon. But that doesn't mean the east side doesn't have it, such as Silver Saddle. We have multiple systems off Silver Saddle. That's probably the higher neighborhood on the east side that we've found so far. As far as the west side, we've actually found that 70% of our tests in Boulder Point have come back above the EPA action level. That's the highest neighborhood I've found. It doesn't have the highest radon levels I've found, but it does have the highest percentage of homes coming back above the EPA action level.
Narrative descriptions are great. Some do more, some do less. That's fine. Another thing that's really helpful to us is a list of updating that the owners have done. Now, you don't have to get down to the little nitty-gritty things like, I put in new light bulbs and replaced doorknobs or something like that. The significant things are important. As Pamela mentioned, a roof, exterior paint, flooring, cabinetry, different things like that. And it may not be a dollar for dollar increase because the other house has all those features, but they might not be the same quality. And the other reason I say the past 15 years is that on our form, on page 1 under condition, we have different categories for updating of kitchen and bath, because those are typically the most significant influence on value when there's been updating or remodeling. And we have, I think, 0 to 1, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, and then older than 10, something like that. And so that's why we ask. If they can give you a date, doesn't have to be exact, approximate dates. And if they don't know, that's okay too. They can say that, we don't know. Oftentimes I go back to prior listings. If it's sold 5 years ago, I can see, did they do any updating at that time? So that's helpful for us. One thing, and this is kind of a pet peeve for appraisers, is 4 comps only. Thank you for putting that comparable sale in, truly. add information, please. A short narrative, okay? I know maybe it wasn't your listing, your client found a FSBO or something like that, but let us know what the materials were. You know, maybe add a short narrative. You might even, you know, in the narrative say, FSBO my buyer found, or something like that, so we know that it was exposed to the market. They don't like us, Fannie Mae that is, doesn't like us to use FSBOs, but they're relevant now, especially in certain market areas. More and more people are tending to use for sale by owner and Zillow and such things like that. If any, I am one of the few appraisers out of Flagstaff that does Winslow, and they're very active as far as Zillow and for sale by owner and stuff like that. And and it's tough to sometimes track down information for sale by owners. I mean, and I'll track, I hunt people down. You know, I see if there's a previous listing and call the realtor and say, hey, did you know these guys just sold their house? Or I'll Google their name and find their phone number and call them up. And most people are quite cooperative and quite helpful, but you do get the occasional person that's like, nope, not going to tell you things, see you later. So, one last thing is we have more and more investors that are involved in the market. And so when we do an investment property, we have to do a comparable rent schedule. And a comparable rent schedule actually can stand on its own. It is an appraisal. Now, if you're appraising the home for a sale or a mortgage, it's integrated into that appraisal. But I have done just comparable rent schedules for people, and it's considered an appraisal. And we need market data. But oftentimes finding single-family rental comparables, it's like pulling hen's teeth. Most of them are managed by the property owner or by realtors. And so we do know who some of you are that manage properties, but some of you kind of do 5 or 6 on the side or something like that, and it becomes difficult for us to track this data down. And so it would be great if we could add those to the MLS system. Although I do know that some people, you know, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to let my competition know what I'm renting it for, because then, I don't know, you know, they're going to undercut me, which I don't know why you would in this rental market, but perhaps it would happen. But, you know, maybe there's another solution that we all can come up with a database that's accessible through the MLS that's only for realtors and for appraisers. And it could be useful for you as realtors too. If you're just deciding to get into the property management, or your friend, you know, has bought a new house, but they're going to keep their old house and calls you up and says, how much do I rent my 3-bedroom, 2-bath place in Coconino Estates for? And you're like, gee, I don't know. Maybe you do have somebody in your office that you can ask, but they may not manage something in Coconino Estates. But if we have a database, you can go in there, take a look, and say, oh, well, here's your range. So that's as far as that goes. Just a couple of things as far as market trends. You know, prices still seem to be increasing. Some areas have moderated. It's hard to just make a blanket statement for our market, other than, yeah, they're increasing. You do get some interesting trends, though. I do a lot of outlying areas, and like one thing, appraisal I just did in the northwest rural area, outlying area, but not out in Fort Valley. It was Creighton Estates and Elton Lookout and stuff. Year to year, statistically, prices decline. But when that happens, you're like, huh? And so we have to look at it a little more closely. You know, we don't just put in decreasing and call it good. Because, you know, if somebody just looks at the raw data in the MLS and they're like, well, it's decreasing, you know, and I check increasing, but I hit in the narrative, I said it decreased. I'll look at it, and I'll look at the square footage. You know, you know, is the average square footage of the house sold in the current year smaller than the previous year? Sometimes you get anomalies. You know, you'll have a $1.5 million sale in the Parks area, and all of a sudden the data is skewed very high. So we have to dig into it a little bit more. But in that same instance, when I did a 6-month to a 6-month comparison, prices are increasing. I think part of that has to do with the seasonality of our market. An interesting thing I've observed is it does seem like prices decrease somewhat in the winter months. I think that may have to do with weather. It may have to do with the best properties sold through the prime selling season, and the people that have to sell can't take them off the market and wait till the spring. So then you get into the winter months, a little more days on market, and so prices tend to come down a little bit. At least that's my observation in theory. Okay. And just to give you an idea of a specific neighborhood, so if you think about the country club area, okay, within the country club area, I believe there's like 3 subsets. You got the country club PUD, because some people don't want to have the HOA fee, monthly HOA fee in the PUD. You have Walnut Ridge, Amberwood, etc. The newer, for lack of a better term, higher end, higher quality houses. And then Fox Glen, which is one of the original neighborhoods outside of the PUD. So in the country club area, comparing year to year, the number of sales increased, the median price increased 5.6%, and the average increased 11.3%. Typically, they want to see us use the median price, but that's a little tricky because, again, if you have a really high sale, it can skew it, but then it also happens with the average. In Walnut Ridge, number of sales is up, supply is low. 9.8% median increase, 10% average. Then in Fox Glen, number of sales is up, low supply, 5.1% median, 3.1% average. Okay, and all these statistics just change tomorrow, or may have changed by now. These are appraisals I've done in the past month. So now, I mentioned supply and demand. That has an impact on values. The lower the supply, more upward pressure on prices. How do you figure out what's supply and demand? Well, if you look at the past year's number of sales, so let's arbitrarily say there was 48 sales in the country club PUD. Divide that by 12, and that means you had 4 months supply that sold in those previous 12 months. Of course, just like they say about the stock market, past performance is not an indication of future performance. However, so if there's that same neighborhood, there's 16 listed.
6.8. So if you're looking at the action level of 4.0, this is more than 10 times the EPA's recommended level for radon exposure. This was off Lake Mary, so it's again on the west side of Flagstaff, but we were able to mitigate it down to a 0.8, which is well below the EPA action level. And so we keep this moving. I'm ready to take questions.
The cost of testing and then the cost for your typical remediation system, such as the one that.
She asked what the cost for testing is, as well as the typical remediation. A single house normally only requires 1 test, which is 170. And like I said, it's a 48-hour test, so we would set it, come back 48 hours later. We do have a handout on each of your tables that covers testing procedures, and we also have another handout that kind of just covers general information, such as the EPA estimates that 21,000 people a year die in America from radon-induced lung cancer. It's the second leading cause behind smoking, and if you're a smoker, it actually compounds it. So you're even more likely to get radon-induced lung cancer based on the combination of the two. Reasons why you would need multiple tests in a house are, say, part of the house is above a slab and another part is above a crawl space. You could have different intrusion of radon levels at those 2 places, so you'd want to book multiple. Say there's a mother-in-law quarter that's separated from the house, you would want to also test that because they can come back at different levels. And just go ahead.
Different times of year, are levels higher or lower, like winter lower, possibly?
Not necessarily winter, because mainly people are just adhere to the test conditions more readily. You're never really keeping the windows open at night. That's the biggest one that we need, are the closed house conditions. We actually need that 12 hours in advance before we set the test. But there isn't one time of year that makes it more common for radon. It just is always around. Go ahead.
So quick plug for Drew and ADA, you installed a remediation in our personal home.
Yep.
And they do a great job, they're clean, they're fast, super friendly, knowledgeable, so if you have a chance to use them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But question.
Sure.
We do have a remediation in our home, so is there a time frame for retesting after that's installed?
Well, the EPA recommends retesting every 2 years once you've had a high level, and every 5 years actually once you've had a low level. And that's because the uranium that is going through its decay process can actually change at the rate that it decays. So you can actually see a house that tested below can actually become a house that it's been testing above at a certain point. I have not experienced that yet, but going over all of our training, we are certified in radon testing and mitigation, and I hold more certifications in radon than anybody else in the state. So I can help you with any questions you have over radon. Yes?
And did you answer her question, what's like the typical fix?
The typical fix, it's different between slab on grade and crawl space. Slab on grade, we're essentially using that slab to create a vacuum under it. And so that generally goes from 1,600 to 2,000, depending on different things such as how tall the house is, how much digging we have to do to actually get below the foundation, stuff like that. For crawl spaces, that can actually, that's the more expensive one. It generally goes from 3,000 to 5,000, and that depends on square footage and how much working space we have under the crawl space. So with a crawl space, we have to get in that crawl space, put down a plastic membrane, and we have to seal it around all the walls, every support, any pipe that goes from ground to floor. So we can be in really tight spaces for multiple days, just trying to make it so we can actually create a vacuum so that we can create a flow for that radon to go rather than into your house. Yes?
It makes sense for real estate resale to trigger this kind of inspection. How many people in the general population? Do you get people who've lived in their home for 10 years and all of a sudden they want it? Has it filtered out to the...
It's filtering out very slowly. That real estate transactions used to be 95% of our testing. Now we're down around 80% of our testing is real estate transactions. So we're getting more word of mouth between people, especially in neighborhoods that have had high levels, especially between people who've been diagnosed. They seem to, once they let out to friends, family that they've been diagnosed with lung cancer, we see obviously a spike of friends, family, everybody living around that becomes testing. Yes?
I've heard that granite countertops produce a good amount of radon.
They can be found to produce radon, not all of them do, but we have never found them to actually produce a good amount. We've done some testing where we put one of our active radon, continuous radon monitors on the countertop, and then one a foot away at the same level on like a step ladder. And the one on the countertop came back at a 6.3, but the one only a foot away came back at a 1.3. So what that's telling us is it's not off-gassing enough to contaminate the whole house, but it is a concern level. Say if you have a bowl of fruit always sitting on this granite countertop, it can be picking up what are called the decay products. And the decay products are what happens when radon-222 turns into polonium-218. And so that shoots off, the most concerning one is an alpha particle. It's the heaviest decay product in that transformation. And so that can do what's called plating out. So it can plate out to fruit, dust, dander, anything in the air. You can breathe that in, or if you're eating the fruit without washing it good, you could then be ingesting that alpha particle, which can then mutate or damage your tissue. And that's what leads to cancer down the road.
So how about homes with like stone floors?
Stone floors, again, we haven't seen any that test high that can't be remediated. So I've tested multiple houses with stone, tile, marble floors, and when they're tested high, we've always been able to get them below the EPA action level. So it is a fixable issue. Generally, your house, after it's been repaired, is going to be lower than a house in the general area. But just because your neighbor has high radon levels doesn't mean you will. So we always recommend testing. We've seen swings of a house with a 25 2 houses down, a 4. Still above the EPA action level, but that's a really big swing. So you never know until you test.
One last question, how do you remediate homes with basements?
Basement, that would be a sub-slab decompression system, same as any slab, except most basements are going to be partially to fully buried. So we would be going through the slab on the inside and traveling up the wall and then penetrating to the outside once we get above the grade.
So you just move the gas from underneath the outside?
Exactly, right on. It dissipates really easily once you get it into fresh air. We're naturally breathing in around 0.1 to 0.2 naturally outside. Anybody else?
Thank you so much, Drew. All right, and about wells, which a lot of us like to have. Ms. Krista.
Right, so I'll be really quick. David Stevens with Flagstaff Pump Sales and Service, not to be confused with David Stevens, the Realtor. I do get plenty of phone calls for him, but yeah, because it's spelled the same way and everything, so we have the same spelling. So yeah, I own Flagstaff Pump Sales and Service. I've been up in Flagstaff. A lot of you may know my uncle, Bill Myers. He passed away about 1.5 years ago, and I've kind of taken over doing all the work here in Flagstaff for him. And so just, there is a flyer on the table we put down that has all of our services and has a lot of useful information for you guys. It's kind of most of the questions that I get from the realtors when they're looking at property that either have a well or a hauled water situation. And even customers are looking to do, rainwater catchment. We do provide all those services. So kind of the main service that you guys would be interested in is the well inspections. Pretty much any house now that has a well or a hauled water system is going to require an inspection and a report for the lender, and we provide all those. So our normal services are $300 to do the well inspection, the tank inspection. That includes checking the water levels in the well, the production rate, how many gallons per minute the well produces, and we take a water sample and have that tested for total coliform E. coli. That's all included in the $300 cost. Just so you guys are aware, an FHA and a VA home does require more extensive water testing. And so, of course, the cost is more. It's an additional $250 to do the FHA VA water testing. So you're up to like $550 on the FHA VA loan. And the other important thing to remember is that even with expedited on that water sample, it's still a 10-day turnaround for the water sample. So a lot of times that doesn't work in the 10-day inspection period just because of how long it takes for them to test the additional water. So just a couple of things for you guys to keep in mind. As far as scheduling, normally we can accommodate any inspection within a day or two. So once you get into that inspection period, give me a call and we can get that scheduled up and get that taken care of for you in the inspection period. The standard conventional loan water testing, we have the results within 24 hours. So once I go out and do the inspection, I submit the sample, we'll have the results for you the next day on that to get that submitted. So some of the other things, like I said, I grew up here in Flagstaff. I've been in the water well industry for 35 years up here, so I'm pretty familiar with everything around Flagstaff. So whenever you have a customer that's looking at a piece of property, or a client, so if you have a client that's looking at a piece of property that has any questions, and so some of the areas that we work in are, Lockett Ranches, those are all on wells up in Lockett. The Baderville, Fort Valley area, those are all on wells. Parks, most of those are wells or hauled water. There's the section at Doney Park way up in the back that has hauled water, that has tanks. Just did that inspection this week. We did one out there. So yeah, those are kind of the services. The other thing to remember is that not everywhere in Flagstaff is water available through a well. So it's really important when you're showing these properties that at least call and talk to me about it and say, hey, we're looking at this piece of property in Parks. What are the chances of getting a well? I will try really hard not to sabotage the deal. However, if they call and ask me, I'm going to give them my, my experience in that area and say, there's a lot of dry wells in that area. They may not get water, just so that they're aware of that, because there's probably nothing worse than somebody's buying a property expecting to drill a well, and I tell them, you're not going to get water there. And some of the areas that's a real problem is like the Cosmino, Winona area. There's a lot of land out there that's for sale. Unfortunately, there's no shallow water. The water in that area is like 1,400 to 1,600 feet deep, and you're looking at $160,000 to drill and equip a well out there. So if somebody's looking at a piece of property and they think they're going to go drill a well and have water, and then they call me and I tell them, no, you're gonna spend $160,000 for a well, then they're probably gonna change their mind. So the other thing that I do install tanks and pumping systems for people that are hauling, and I try really hard to explain to them that it's not a big deal to haul water. There's lots of water haulers available in town. You can get on a schedule with them. They just deliver your water, and it's just pretty much like having city water. It's just a little bit more expensive, but not that much more. And I can set up a system for them with that. And then you can also, if you look in this flyer that I put on the table, we just did some ballpark figures just to help you guys out on different systems. You know, if they do end up drilling a well that's putting in a 5,000 gallon cistern, and that's the other thing is pretty much everywhere in Flagstaff, if you drill a well, you're going to have a cistern because we have really low producing wells. They're not going to produce enough water to go straight to the house, so you're going to have a cistern. But we've got some pricing in there for that. You know, a typical well, you're going to be in the $25,000 to $30,000 range to drill the well, equip the well, put the tank. And that's a turnkey system that all they have to do is turn on the faucet and the house and water comes out. And then if they're hauling water, you know, 5,000 gallon cistern, 12 to 14,000. And then we're doing a rainwater collection system, so we're getting to see more and more people that want to collect rainwater. We put in quite a few systems, and with that, we normally recommend a 10,000 gallon tank, just so that when you do have a big rain storm, you're able to catch all that water. Because if you only put a 5,000 gallon tank in, you get a big storm, then the tank's just overflowing. That water's flowing out of the ground. You don't have the storage for it. So we've been putting in quite a few of those. And the other thing with the rainwater catchment is obviously we do all the water filtration and treatment so that that's safe water for them to use in the house. And we do UV sterilizer, a lot of filtration, pre-filters before it goes into the tank to catch the pine needles and dead bugs and all that stuff. So yeah, we do a complete system for all that. Is there anything else? And I don't know if you guys know, so Krista, for you guys that are familiar with it, you've used this before. This is Krista that works in the office. She's the one that prepares the reports and does all the real work. And then I've got CJ with me here today because he's actually taking over and starting to do a lot of the well inspections. So when you do call, you may end up needing CJ at the site to do the actual well inspections and doing that kind of stuff. So I just wanted you to be familiar with our faces. And I do appreciate you guys having me here today, and I appreciate the referrals because I know I've worked with a few of you in here before on some of these well inspections. It's always great when somebody calls me and say, hey, I talked to so-and-so, they told me to call you and come, you know, that you're the guy that do the well inspections. So, yeah, I'm the only one in Flagstaff that actually does the well inspections. So I'm kind of the local guy here and, you know, trying to provide a good service for you guys and make sure that we get all the wells inspected, get that service for you so the sale can go through smoothly. So with that, any questions? Yes?
Can we talk about septics for just a moment? You do that too.
I do not do septics. No.
That's coming next.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I just.
All right, she's so
yes,
okay.
yes, I'm just the water, I'm not on the receiving end, I'm on the
Yeah, let's say south of Williams, Perkinsville areas.
Yeah, so yes, I also go do all the tanks, because all that stuff north of Williams, all that's on a hauled water, and they all have tanks. So I do the tank inspections north of Williams, south of Williams, down to Perkinsville. There are a few wells south of Williams when you're going down the Perkinsville Highway. There are a few places that have wells down there, but there are no wells north of Williams. So that's pretty much all hauled water out north of Williams. Yeah, it's just the water really deep there. It's just cost prohibitive. So most of those are all hauled water situations north, and then also south of Flagstaff down Muntz Park. Fox Ranch. I do a lot of work at Fox Ranch to take care of all their stuff. So so that's kind of the area that we cover. And then of course Winslow and pretty much anywhere around Flagstaff there.
Big radius on it.
Yes, exactly. Anybody else? All right. Well, thanks.
They've been great. They're quick to get out, respond really quickly. The reports are great. We have questions about things. It's been extremely helpful. So awesome to work with. All right, and shall we get to the best part? That's it. Come on over. And it's Steve with Sandoval Sanitation. A lot of us use him here. He's been in Flagstaff quite some time. So.
Well, actually, it's Steve's High Country Sanitation. It used to be Sandoval Sanitation. We started out 1982. Me and my father started the business, and about 8 years ago, and my wife and I purchased the business from them, and since then they've departed. So, Been doing this for about 36 years now. I've been certified by the state for over 16 years doing home inspections. I'm certified through NOT. I'm certified by many alternative systems because they want qualified people to work on their systems only. So maintenance is probably the biggest and most important thing when it comes to any type of septic or alternative system. And yeah, I'd rather take your questions and fill in the blanks that way, because I'm sure most of you have a lot of questions. I usually fill in the blanks that way. So you had a question? I'm on the receiving end of this one.
Thank you. So when you have a house that was built before permitting, and it's on a septic, and then you have a party that wants to add on to that house, and the septic isn't equipped to do an addition, and you don't even know where the lines are, because the county has no knowledge of where those lines are, can you come out, would you come out and look and find out where the lines are, how big the leach field is? Do you have an ability to do that after it's already in the ground?
The leach fields, no, but typically what they set their standards on as far as capacity of tank, a basic 3-bedroom house will have like a 1,000-gallon tank, 4-bedroom will have like a 1,250-gallon tank, 5-bedroom and up will have like a 1,500-gallon tank, and they go by also fixture counts, gallons per day, how many gallons per day the system will handle. So when there are no permits through the county, what I'll do is I'll go out there, we'll find out exactly what size the system is. When I submit my report, that's what the county goes off of from that point on. They're able to go back and take a look at it and say, okay, this is what we have, this is what the design flow is, and go from there. And as far as adding stuff, additions, additional rooms, stuff like that, the county would have to answer those questions as to, you know, based on my information, giving them the size of the tank. So they would tell you, like if you had a 4-bedroom house and you had a 1,250-gallon tank, and you guys wanted to add a garage with a bathroom and maybe another bedroom, it wouldn't handle that system, so they would either make you put in an additional tank or a large enough tank to handle that system, and probably an additional leach lake. But that just also depends on what kind of leach system you have. Because there's gravity flow systems, which are basically perforated pipes sitting on bedded rock in a trench where the effluent water goes out to, and then you have your alternative systems that are, some are pressurized distribution systems, some are Wisconsin mounds, sand filters. There's a whole host of them. There's about 7 or 8 different systems up in northern Arizona, Coconino County, that I deal with. So it all depends on what's actually out there. But on the older homes, those are a little bit easier to work on because they're usually the older gravity flow systems.
Okay, and so the party doesn't build on top of the lines?
Right, typically that won't happen. Typically when we find the septic system, we can basically tell where the leach field is. So it's not an exact science, but I've been doing it a long time and I'm pretty accurate at finding those type of things. So.
Do you use Sedona?
Pardon me?
Sedona? Do you use Sedona?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Go to Sedona. Yes.
To her question, I have a home in northern Phoenix that has a septic, and it was built in the 50s, and I can't get any records on it. And so, do you have any recommendations for anybody in that area?
In that area, I don't, because Maricopa County is such a big county, and I don't know what their health department regulations are down there. I know they're similar to what we have up here, but I don't know how they would handle that type of situation.
Do you have any referrals?
For down there, I don't. We could probably find some for you. I have a few people that we've worked with before down there, so I could probably find somebody that can help you out.
Thank you.
Yes.
So for all our clients in the past that we've sold homes to in Downey Park and other areas that have septic and alternate systems, how often, I mean, what kind of maintenance schedule should they be?
Okay, that's a very good question. For regular gravity flow systems, the state recommended, and we as a company have always recommended about 3 years for pumping, every 3 years. And then the state changed it a little bit up because so many different systems were going in. So they wanted 25%, when the tank fills up to 25% of the tank's actual capacity, that's when to service it. And sometimes that happens sooner. So like every 2 years is what I'm finding. Alternative systems are a lot different. They require a lot more maintenance. And that's one of the things you might want to explain for all the people that are representing buyers, to let them know, especially if they have an alternative system, it's going to need regular maintenance, because if you don't maintenance it regularly, when they go down, they're very expensive to get back up. Typically, we'll lose pumps, aerators, we'll lose filters. I mean, and
Thousands and thousands.
yeah. My typical cost for something like that when it goes down, depending on the size of the system, is about $2,500 to $3,000 to get it back up and running, versus a maintenance cost of a third of that. You know, between pumping and maintenance, changing filters, cleaning pump housings. You know, that's the biggest thing I see when it comes to alternative systems. So I try to make it a point when I fill out the reports at the end. Hopefully the buyers will see it, saying, you know, this is an alternative system, it needs regular maintenance. You know, and a lot of people, that's one of my biggest things when people call me up. Well, we've had the system, you know, for 8, 10, 12 years. Nobody ever told us we had to maintenance it. By the time I get to it at that point, everything's burnt out and down. So, and some of these systems are very complicated. Some of them require maintenance like every 3 months. Some of them every 6 months. We offer service contracts. I mean, some of them are very complicated. I mean, I have a laptop that I have to plug into motherboards on some of these systems to calibrate them. You know, they're very, very complicated. Some of them very simplified, but others that have come out, you know, and I had to become an expert in them. You know, so I went to the companies that manufacture these and got their certifications to work on the systems. Right now, I'm the only one in Flagstaff that's certified to work on a lot of the alternative systems that are in the ground. A lot of other guys that I know have a lot of issues with them. You know, they can't figure it out. You know, they'll tell the customers, or they'll call us direct and say, can you help us out? You know, we don't know what's going on with this system. So I get a lot of referrals, not only from customers, but from other companies as well, because they all know, pretty much know what the hell I'm doing when it comes to them. So, yes.
So with the Fort Valley area, is it new homes still just vault and haul?
No. The only time the county will make a person put a vault and haul system in is typically like when they're in a floodplain and they can't get any type of water to leach out. Because what you got to remember is the systems that they put in are basically mini treatment plants. The state and the county want the effluent water going back into the ground to be as clean as possible. That's why a lot of these new systems have chlorinators on them, UV filters. I mean, they're very, very complicated. Some of them aren't so much, you know, sand filters above ground, you know. So vault and hauls are very rare and few and far between here in Flagstaff. Mormon Lake, I have a lot of customers that are service than anything else. Those type of systems, depending on the residents, like if it's a summer home, they're not too expensive to operate, because once they fill up, you got to go pump them out. That water goes nowhere. You know, they have alarms on the set that will set them off when they fill up. When they fill up, we have to go out and pump them out. The county requires a contract for a vault and haul with somebody like my company, so that it can be serviced on a regular basis, so it doesn't overflow or go out into the environment. So, there was another question? Yes.
Other than chlorine bleach and the proper toilet paper, how should we be advising our clients who have a septic of any kind?
Chemicals, the most, I would say volatile or upsetting chemical to the bacteria systems that most of these systems depend on are antibacterial soaps. Okay? What I recommend to like my housewives when I go out, you know, typically they like to have one bottle at every single sink of the house in the bathtub, you know. So I recommend one bottle at one designated sink in the house, so it's not so detrimental to the bacteria in the systems. Cleaning products, you want to look for green products. You know, there's a lot of products out there that are just as safe and efficient as like chlorine bleach or your Comets or stuff like that for cleaning the toilet bowls. Always read the labels because it'll say it's septic safe. And if not, call me. You know, call us. We can answer those questions, or we can go out and discuss it with the homeowners. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing, is educating my customers as to the do's and don'ts, the maintenance. Like I said, the maintenance is the most important, because once you lose one of those systems, especially the gravity flow systems, then it becomes really expensive as well, because then you're talking about replacing leach fields and stuff like that. And then if the county gets involved in those because of the new regulations, then you're looking at possibly putting an alternative disposal works in. So a ballpark figure, say a gravity flow septic system with a regular leach field is going to cost you anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 depending on the digging. Alternative systems usually start at about $25,000 to $30,000 to start. So, you know, it's important to take care of the systems, maintenance on, pump them out, have the filters cleaned, you know, whenever they need them. And if they don't know what they have, or you guys don't know what they have, give me a call, you know, and we can figure it out. On home sales, basically I'm hired by the seller to protect the buyer, you know, and that's my job. So anytime there's something wrong with that, I always make sure that it gets corrected, or, you know, the buyer isn't stuck with a $6,000 repair or something like that. That's my job. To help me do my job better when it comes to that, who's ever represented the seller, more often than not, the sellers are paying for the inspections for these systems. When we get the call from the realtors, we call the county or send an email over there to them asking for the permitting documents for that. If you guys were able to do that when you get the listing, that would save us time, because a lot of times we send it off to the county and we might not get it for 5 days, and your inspection period is going to be ending before I can get that stuff done, and I need to know whether I have permit documents, what's in them, because I have to list that stuff on the ADEQ report. So that's a very important thing. It's very easy to get a hold of the county. Costs what, 15, 20 bucks to get 23 bucks to get the permitting documents for any septic systems that they may have on file. And if they don't have them on file, that's no big deal. All you have to do is note that the county says no records on file, and I'll list that on the report as well. So, any other questions? Yes.
Do you have a list of, when Marilyn asked that question, do you have a list of like the do's and the don'ts that we could give out to our clients that have septic?
I don't right here, but we can get something together for you, and we'd be more than happy to give you something for that. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you keep maintenance records on file? If we have a seller who has been maintenance by your company, do you provide like a record?
Typically, we'll know who our customers are. We keep our records up until 3 years before we box them and file them out. But typically, our customers know when they're due, or they'll get a reminder from us when their systems are due. Plus, I have service contracts for like the alternative systems that require more complicated maintenance. So, I thought I saw another question. Anybody else?